What's going on, football world? It's Carter with X's and O's, and on this video I'm going to be discussing an offensive formation system, specifically as it relates to wide receiver modifications. As you can see, this is part 2 of a multi-part series, so if anything doesn't make sense or is unclear to you, go back and check out videos about the offensive formation system or part 1 of the wide receiver modifications. Starting off, in the prior video, I spoke about a modification that I refer to as squeeze. And in the squeeze modification, and this is just a quick review, it is in the earlier video that I just spoke about, but when in the squeeze modification, it basically tells the wide receivers to decrease their splits, to anywhere between 2 and 3 yards, 2 to 3 yards. And I will diagram that real quick and get into the other modifications. So when we're talking about an I right, you can see we're going to build this all off of I right formations. That's just for simplicity purposes. You can run these modifications with other formations and other modifications. But when we get a squeeze call, we are going to simply decrease the splits of the wide receivers down, and I like to bring them close and tight all the way down to 2 yards. So if I build these little brackets here, this is what the squeeze call is. So X would have his inside foot 2 yards outside of the end man on the line of scrimmage. For the X receiver, that would be the left offensive tackle. For the Z, or the flanker, his inside foot, which would be his left foot in this situation, would be 2 yards off of the end man of the line of scrimmage, which is the Y, or the tight end for him. This would be a simple I right squeeze. So that is the formation with the wide receiver modification, I right squeeze. Also in the previous video, I spoke about other modifications that the wide receivers can do. I'm not going to go into those into depth. I am simply going to show how combining those modifications can add to the flexibility of the offensive system or the offensive formation to get a mismatch or a defender in conflict, to gain the edge basically while calling an offensive call or calling an offensive game. The next one I want to go over is I right, and this would be a simple twins squeeze. So that's the modification. You can call twins by itself, but when you put the squeeze call on it, obviously your receivers will decrease the splits, as I spoke about in the previous diagram. So again, 2 yards, and this one is where you have to get a little creative with your rules. But what I would do here is, because we're going with the twins, your Z back is going to be 2 yards off of the end man of the line of scrimmage, which now would be the left offensive tackle, and then from the Z, I would go another 2 yards out from him, and that's where I would place the X. And so there we have our I right twins squeeze. There's various reasons why you might want to do that. Again, if you're on the goal line, or there's a short yardage situation, or if you have this formation into the right or on the right hash, that means the left side of the field is the wide side of the field, and so you're going to have a lot of running room out there. You can squeeze your formation down like this, run a sprint out, run some type of sprint out to the left here, and you're going to have a lot of space on the football field to work with 2 of your best athletes. So actually 3 of your best athletes, if you consider your quarterback out here sprinting out, and then you can get your X and your Z out on some type of flood pattern. So, you know, different reasons why you might want to do that. Getting to the edge basically on these squeeze calls, makes it a lot easier. Moving into the next one, on part 1 of the wide receiver modification, on that video I spoke about another modification that I refer to as stack. So again, we're just going to add stack plus the squeeze call. So this would be a I write stack squeeze, and then you would add your play call onto the back of that. But basically, again, you're just going to draw my bracket 2 yards off the end man of the line of scrimmage. There sits your X, and there sits your Z in the stack, but it's squeezed down. The next one over here would be an invert squeeze. I write invert squeeze. Again, we're going to go 2 yards off of either end man on the line of scrimmage. So there's our 2 yards on the left. Here's our 2 yards on the right. And invert basically says that the X is going to step off of the line of scrimmage. So I'm going to put the X off and draw an arrow down, and then the Z would be on. We are inverting their alignment rules. Let me clean up that arrow like so. So X steps off, Z steps on. Again, this makes, as I said in the previous video, this makes the Y ineligible. But it could make the tackle eligible if he checks into the ball game. So the tackle can become eligible. Like so. And I'm going to color him in with X's and O's green, just so we know that he is uncovered, and if we want to use him as a receiver, we can definitely do that. So that would be I write invert squeeze. Let's move down to the next one. This one would be I write over squeeze. And so what we do is we just bring the X and the Z together. We bring them over. X would stay on the line. So X would be right there. And then another 2 yards out, we would bring the Z is already over here. But basically it's a twin set to the Y receiver. So this would be X plus Z plus the Y, and you have your over squeeze. I write over squeeze. Again, this makes the, as you can see from the invert call, this would make the Y ineligible because he is covered up by the X. But again, it makes the tackle eligible if he checks into the ball game. And again, if he checks in, we'll go ahead and color him green because he can now catch a forward lateral. I write over squeeze. The final one would be I write trade squeeze. I write trade squeeze. What this does is it basically flips the X and the Z on opposite sides of the formation. So as you can see in the top left diagram up here, I write squeeze X, Y, and Z. We're going to have the X and the Z trade. But we're also going to squeeze it down. So again, let's draw our brackets. So there are 2 yards like so. Z is going to be on the line of scrimmage, away from the Y, and then the X would swap sides with the Z. And you might want to do that for different reasons, but he's going to be off the line. So alignment doesn't necessarily change, they just trade sides, like so. So as you can see, this has been part 2 of the wide receiver modification system as it fits into the overall offensive formation system. Again, I encourage you to go back and check out any of those earlier videos that discuss the basics of the formation system, or part 1 of the wide receiver modifications. As always, I hope this has added to your knowledge of the game of football, whether you are a player, a coach, or a fan. If you'd like to ask a question or see a video topic in the future, please leave a comment in the comment section or email me at xzandos.com. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and there will be more videos to come.